Welcome, everyone. And everyone, welcome. Welcome. The Apollo Theater and WNYC, in collaboration with Move On, proudly presents MLK, the Pan-Africanist. Yes. I'm Terrence McKnight, and I will serve as your host, your master of ceremonies for today's event. And throughout the event, feel free to share your experiences, your insights using our official hashtag, WNYC MLK. So let's get underway. Please welcome to the stage the executive producer from the Apollo Theater, Camilla Forbes.
Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? Fantastic, fantastic. I just want to thank you all for being here. I know it's rain, sleet, and snow today, but clearly we are in this space and in this moment of collectivity for a reason and a true purpose. I want to thank everyone who's joining on the airwaves and online. It's an honor to gather in reflection, conversation, and collective inquiry as we mark the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., not as a figure frozen in history, and I really want to underscore that because this event every single year is not about freezing him in history, but as a global thinker whose ideas continue to challenge and guide us. I want to extend a deep gratitude to our partners and collaborators who make today possible. That's the entire team at New York Public Radio and WNYC. Thank you for stewarding this important annual tradition for 20 years, everyone. 20 years this tradition has been happening. For continuing to create a space for rigorous and necessary dialogue. And also to the team at the Apollo. Thank you for your leadership and for holding this institution not frozen in time, but as a living, breathing home for art, truth, and community. Special thanks to Issachar Bey and March On. Your commitment to storytelling, history, and justice grounds this work in purpose. But this year's program is the Pan-Africanist. It's anchored in Dr. King's 1957 journey to Ghana, but you'll hear more about that framing from Issachar, but this is a moment that is affirmed his understanding that the struggle for justice was never confined by borders. Dr. King recognized that liberation movements across African diaspora were interconnected, that freedom in one place was tied to freedom everywhere. And now we're naming as honestly a global state of emergency. This rings more true now more than ever. Dialogue allows us to remember, right? It allows us to reckon, it allows us to imagine, but it carries forward history while asking us who we are becoming. But this moment also arrives during the Apollo's moment. This is our breaking ground season. This is a season that reflects both on where we've been, but also where we're going. Breaking ground is about creating space for new voices, new forms, new ideas, and deeper connections, honoring our legacy while continuing to shape the future. So as the Apollo grows physically and artistically, we stay grounded in our commitment to creativity and community. So thank you all for being here. We're in a new space, not the historic theater, as that is under renovation. But we want to continue to do this kind of programming in these intimate spaces as we continue to build out our larger space next door. And we invite you all in this journey and invite to become a member of the Apollo to help carry this mission and vision forward. You can look on our website, apollotheater.org, to find out more information. But in closing, I just want to state, Dr. King called on us to listen deeply, to act collectively, and to remain accountable to one another. May today be an offering towards that call. And now, to really launch us onto this program, it's my pleasure to welcome the artistic director of the March On Festival, Ms. Issachar Bey.
Giving praise to the source of all life and honor to the seven directions, north, south, east, west, above, below, and within. And to the cycle of life of African ancestred people, those who've gone on before, those living and those yet to be born. Because they were, we are. Because we are, they will be. It is a double pleasure for me to welcome you on behalf of the March On Festival. This is our 10th year collaborating on this event with the world-famous Apollo Theater and the nation's largest public radio station, WNYC, New York Public Radio. We are thrilled over the years to have brought some powerful speakers and performers from our March On family to the stage here. It has given us the opportunity to hear their wisdom again and to honor them publicly, decades after the height of their involvement in the civil rights movement. I remember especially a friend of the festival who came to the festival 3 times, Claudette Colvin, who passed this week. Recently, I watched a film where one of the characters portrayed an elderly gentleman relating his experiences as an attorney during the Watergate hearings to a woman in her 30s. She was fascinated with the twists and turns of the Watergate scandal. Eyes wide, nearly breathless with anticipation, she asked, "So what happened to the president, President Nixon?" The attorney replied, "He resigned." She gasped, "No, really?" That is what we face now. The steady erosion of history, even recent events, removed from books, dismantled in public spaces, replaced by false narratives, misleading websites, and a deluge of mindless digital entertainment and artificial information. The 3 institutions that produced this event use it mindfully and deliberately, not just to preserve and protect the historical record. We are mindful of the African proverb, "Until lions learn to write, tales of the hunt will always glorify the hunter." We engage knowledgeable speakers, scholars, and performers to offer other points of view, the rest of the story. And we are doing it under tremendous political pressure, stripped funding, and reduced staff. But here is the blessing in these circumstances. The times call on us to practice our commitment, to actively support the institutions we use regularly and have taken for granted. The times demand us to act as a beloved community in every sense of the word. So today we honor Dr. King while piercing the hagiography which surrounds his life and works, not to degrade him, but to unpack his brilliant perspectives and illuminate his global humanity. The views he professed in his lifetime were not at all as popular as some of them are now. They reached into political and social arenas that power brokers and peers did not want him to enter, and they are just as timely as they were then. They offer us words of encouragement and direction as we stand on the front lines in these streets or work behind the scenes in whatever field we find ourselves. To quote our dear brother, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now." Happy birthday, Dr. King. Thank you all for joining us. March on. And now it is my pleasure to bring back Terrence.
I'm a longtime host on WQXR, the sister station to WNYC, and we're the only classical music station here in the city. I'm also a longtime host of this extraordinary MLK event. You know, it's always an honor to be a part of this event, and it's a big year for us. This is year number 20. So thanks to all of you all for being here with us to help us celebrate this momentous year. And I also want to express our gratitude to our partners at the Apollo and March On. They've been with us for a decade now. And thanks to everyone, all of the artists and thinkers and creators who've participated in this program over the years and who you'll get to meet today, that brilliance and energy that they've brought to us over the years. And today we're going to focus on a very timely and real concerns. How Dr. King's teachings and actions can guide us in fostering empathy for folks across the street and folks across the world. How we can bring the legacy of Dr. King on the present when there are lots of folks working overtime to turn back time, trying to do the work of our civil rights leaders, trying to rewrite history. Are you all here today? Yes. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Okay. Trying to rewrite history, attacking the free press and free expression, wreaking havoc on the arts and culture, trying to eliminate public media. Some of you all heard about what happened last year. The White House and Congress completely defunded public radio and public television. Some of you heard about that, how it created a crisis, a state of emergency at New York Public Radio and across the nation. But the support that we received from our listeners was absolutely startling and humbling. So we thank you for your support. You know, public media is one of the few remaining nonpartisan media spaces that we have left. And in public radio and public television, we're guided by a good faith mission to inform, educate, and inspire people from all walks of life, bringing them together at a time where many forces are working to tear us apart. In the face of these attacks, we've remained undaunted, and we've stood strong in our mission. Because if you're a listener to WNYC or QXR, you've heard us say, you can defund public media, but you can't defund the truth. You can't defund the drive of those journalists and those artists and educators and those change makers like the ones that we'll get to meet today. Can't defund that. Our memories can't be defunded. So today we're going to honor the strength and determination of those who came before us, especially Dr. King. At WQXR, we cover the vibrant classical music scene here in New York City. And we're always working towards expanding the classical music canon, making the art form just a little more accessible and inclusive to everyone in New York and beyond. At WNYC, we bring you what is the hallmark of public radio: local, national, global format, hybrid programming. So on air and on our news site Gothamist, you get trusted local and national and international news, as well as civil conversation, and the arts and cultural programming. These are unique spaces that keep us all connected to the joys and the struggles of our neighbors, while allowing all of us to be expansive, to locate ourselves as world citizens. It's critical that these spaces remain a place where truth, history, and diversity are still North Star values, where we strive every day to lift up the same types of conversations and performances that we'll experience today. Now, ultimately, all of this allows us to see each other as more fully human. And that's one of the many ways that I feel that the work we do at WNYC and QXR is carrying forward the spirit and project of Martin Luther King Jr. You know, it's in the times of greatest adversity that we see our collective force in sharpest relief. And for us in public media, it's been astounding to see our listeners, members, and partners care and show up and contribute and support in solidarity. And to see all of you here today is a great way for us to start the year. So thank you all for being here. Today, you are not only experiencing a live event in honor of Dr. King, but a radio program going out over 200 stations across the nation. So as such, we may experience a reset, a little stop, a little restart. So just stay with us, stay alive, stay awake, and share your experiences using the hashtag WNYC MLK. You all ready to make some radio? Please welcome to the Apollo stages at the Victoria, NYC, now host Janae Pierre and WNYC Morning Edition host Michael Hill. Oh, okay.
Hello, Harlem. And everyone listening here in New York City, and hello, everyone listening everywhere else in the world. Welcome.
Welcome to MLK26, the Pan-Africanist.
We have so much to share as we honor the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on today.
We certainly do. This is our 20th annual MLK celebration. We have political scientists, historians, authors, and activists, and we have big musical performances, and we have an appropriate MLK speech for this occasion.
Today's program is all about understanding Dr. King as a global citizen, someone deeply engaged in Pan-African thought and action.
From continental Africa to the African diaspora, today's program will weave a narrative from Ghana and Nigeria through the Caribbean and right back here to the United States.
Yep, we'll explore how the civil rights movement inspired anti-colonialism, how Black liberation, theology, and global liberation philosophy color Dr. King's perspectives relative to injustice.
Heavy topics with heavy hitters. Welcome to MLK26, Dr. King, the Pan-Africanist. Enjoy the show. Let's get started.
Official event hashtag WNYC MLK. Joining Michael Hill on the Victoria stage is the president of the National Urban League, Mark Morial, and the John L. Loeb Associate Professor on the Social Sciences at Harvard University, Dr. Brandon Terry.
President Morial.
Yeah, good
Professor
morning, good
Terry.
afternoon, good day.
Thank you very much for being here. It's an honor to welcome you here. This panel is largely shaped by the National Urban League's State of Emergency, Democracy, Civil Rights, and Progress Under Attack. The State of Black America report came out in July of 2025. We'll unpack the report and explore just how dire these two gentlemen believe things have become. Mark Morial, we start with you. Why declare a state of emergency?
Because there is a state of emergency. Let's just take democracy. One of the fundamental components of democracy is the right to vote. All the way back in 2013, the Supreme Court of the United States effectively gutted one of the most important provisions of the Voting Rights Act. And the Voting Rights Act of '65, which really made the promise of the 15th Amendment real, enabled African Americans and other people of color to participate meaningfully in the political process. Its cutback and the erosion that the Supreme Court occasioned led to just an avalanche of voter suppression legislation and laws all throughout the United States at more than 40 state legislatures. Number two, The rise of Trump and Trumpism, important to understand that there's Trump and Trumpism, has led to an assault on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but that is an assault on equal opportunity. Yes. It is an assault on the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It's an assault on the value proposition that everyone has a right to participate in the American dream. And so these efforts are active, well-funded. They have political support to really erase and really marginalize the progress of the civil rights movement that began in 1954 with the Brown decision. So we must call it for what it is, and it is a state of emergency and a call to action and a call to resist and a call for people to stand up for what I think is everyone's birthright, and that is the right to participate fully and completely in the American dream.
Dr. Terry, in your latest publication, Shattered Dreams, Infinite Hope, you share the concept of tragic hope. Now, if someone doesn't know what an oxymoron is, tragic hope is certainly one of them.
Well, I think, well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I think that it's partly one of the many degenerations of our vocabulary that we now see that as only an oxymoron or a paradox. When you trace the history of thinking in tragic terms back to the Greeks, what they were trying to confront is the same thing we're trying to confront, is the deepest questions of pessimism, right? Is life worth living? Is there a hope for fairness and decency and justice or mercy toward the people who are suffering? How should we think about our strivings in a world where they may not come true, where we face extraordinary obstacles, as President Morial has brilliantly laid out? And so the question is, well, how can you hope in the face of despair, right? And our big challenge, so President Morial has laid out a lot of our political challenges, but we also have a spiritual challenge, which is how do we get people galvanized in the face of the extraordinary struggle we have in front of us and not to give up? And for me, that's about being able to accept a certain number of things that I think tragedy lays out. One of them is that we are always going to face serious conflict. One of the mythologies that we've been telling ourselves about the civil rights movement is that everyone agreed. We convinced everyone. There was a kind of underlying consensus. That wasn't true. And the fact that Trumpism has found such favorable soil shows how deep the disagreements remained. We have to face the fact that our victories aren't guaranteed. We were telling ourselves a story of inevitable progress that can never be defeated. The history of Reconstruction teaches us differently. We're living through a moment that's quite similar. We need to tell ourselves a history about taking responsibility in the face of these controversies and conflicts, because the number one thing to remember is that this could be even worse, right? As awful as it is, this could become worse. We could actually lose the spirit of democracy. And so it's incumbent upon us, even if we don't win everything, to win something and to prevent the greatest defeat imaginable.
Mr. President, the State of Black America report identifies several factors fueling systemic oppression, noted as the backlash pipeline. From fringe narrative to national policy, the factors include alt-right echo chambers, far-right media amplification, legal weaponization, judicial endorsement, policy rollbacks, systemic erosion of rights. Is there a through line or an overarching theme here?
Yeah, I think the overarching theme is that America belongs to some, but not all. It's a reversion to this notion of supremacy and nationalism and a mythology about the founding of America. Yeah. And that is its through line. And what has happened in recent is that through line and that animation now has political supporters, now has economic supporters who are fueling the narrative. If you think about the fact that the ownership of CBS, the ownership of other media organizations, the attacks on the media, and the use of the federal government's regulatory power to bend what type of stories mainstream news organizations cover, you understand
Watch out
that
now.
this is clearly an effort to not only posit that point of view, but to build momentum around that point of view, around a false narrative. It's in conflict with the vision that, I believe that many of us share, and a vision that I firmly believe in, and that is the future of the nation is as a multi-racial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multi-orientation democracy. And we've got to stand up for that notion in contraposition to this idea that this country belongs to some and doesn't belong to all. And that is very, very important that we understand what is fueling this. And the most important thing is that this is not serendipitous. This movement is being funded. This movement is being organized. It gets organized behind the screen, behind the shade, behind the curtain, because it will manifest itself in ways that are designed to trick and deceive. And we've got to understand that. And I feel very strongly that where I stand today, where I sit today, as a son of the South, who's had a chance to serve in elected office, lead a major American city, now lead a major civil rights organization, it is so important that we speak about it and help America understand it.
Is it taking place to a certain degree because we have taken so much in society, the benefits of the civil rights movement and so forth, that we've taken so much for granted in this society?
I think Professor Terry captured it best in his remarks. The idea that progress was inevitable. The idea that we convinced everybody overwhelmingly that, to some extent, civil rights and open access was the key. That somehow we would get to a point in American life where there was no friction and no conflict and no dissent and no debate. And I think we have to be girded for intelligent battle. We have to be girded for the fact that everyone will not necessarily agree. But I do say this, and this is interesting. So on Thursday of this week, I'll be at the National Press Club where we are convening the Demand Diversity Roundtable. We've got 30 leaders, 30 civil rights, social justice leaders, multiracial, multi-ethnic, and we'll be amplifying some new polling on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which demonstrates how popular it is amongst the American people. Notwithstanding, as people have attacked it, its popularity has increased. And this is what's important. Maybe it's the old adage, there's a silent majority of the American people who do not like what they see, they object to what they see, and they're waiting and ready to make their voices heard.
Dr. Terry, King described America as having a congenital deformity of racism that festers and rots. I'm going to read that again. King described America as having a congenital deformity of racism that festers and rots. How does this notion inform how we see America?
Well, first of all, it should inform how we see Dr. King and the holiday we're celebrating. There's a reason that's not among the most quoted words of Dr. King, right? But it's one he deeply believed. And the history backs him up. We're about to head into the 100th celebration of what was once Negro History Week and now Black History Month. And it coincides with the 250th anniversary of the founding. And we are at a crossroads with popular historical understanding. One of the things that was striking about the so-called woke years is its intense focus on uncovering histories that had been lost. So one of the things that's really difficult to accept about the founding of this country is that many African Americans fought on the side of the British because Lord Dunmore promised them that they would be free if they fought. Our country still, the country that became the United States, has had slavery longer than we've had freedom, still, in the year 2026. The great economist at Princeton, Alora Doronicor, shows that at the end of slavery, there was a 60-to-1 wealth differential between whites and blacks. There is no known economic growth that could have closed that gap. There's no known rate of economic growth that could have closed that gap. We've inherited deep racial stigma. Indeed, one of the first things that American citizens did together as a civic enterprise, while in New England people were doing town halls, in the South people were doing slave patrols. Part of how they forge what we do together as American citizens is to patrol for black people who weren't where they're supposed to be. That is deeply rooted in our constitutional structure. When we talk about how there can be a minority control, not our minority, but a minority control over American politics, that's rooted in compromises that trace back to slavery. So if you want to unravel these things, and if you want to really raise the questions that the civil rights movement was raising about what would the fair value of our equal rights really look like, what would genuine empowerment for black people really look like, it calls into question things that people treat as sacrosanct in American history. It calls into question constitutional settlements, municipal boundaries, economic order. Those are what King is trying to draw our attention to, while nevertheless saying the democratic spirit is real and we can fight for it. We don't have to let the congenital deformity win.
In addition to challenging the way we see America, Dr. Terry, you challenge us to reconsider how we hold the civil rights movement and Dr. King himself.
So I think, as I've said a bit about, that we've been telling a romantic story about the civil rights movement. It's one where it's about consensus. It's about the essential good triumphing over inessential evil. It's about treating the tendencies that the civil rights movement was struggling against as kind of anachronistic, as something that has already been overcome, right? And it is evasive, therefore, about the deep-seated conflicts that that movement exposed. And it can only tell its story by treating the civil rights movement as really narrow. We tell a story about the South, not the country. We tell a story about legal discrimination and legal prohibitions, not economic exploitation. Jim Crow is about taking sharecroppers' wealth. It's about taking black people's consumer dollars and hitching it to a whole practice of humiliation. We don't tell that story. We tell the civil rights struggle as an American story, not as one deeply dependent on a vast Cold War conflict that gave black people unprecedented leverage to talk about what America would look like in the eyes of the rest of the world if it couldn't live up to its promises with honor, what it would look like to newly decolonizing nations. That's not the story you're getting in civil rights pageantry. And when we say the words about the civil rights movement, we try to mobilize its memory and expect it to do certain kinds of work in the world it seems to no longer do. The problem is that we've misunderstood the movement. And that's why our ritual reenactments and our mobilization of the language isn't producing the results we want. So we need a different kind of story so that we can reorient our political judgment in the present.
The Honorable John Lewis implored us to get in good trouble, necessary trouble, and help redeem the soul of America. Mr. Mayor, for those compelled to join the fight for justice and democracy, what can be done?
One thing I don't want to miss is thanking WNYC. We should give them a round of applause for continuing to do this. Thank you all very, very much, and everyone else who's made today's conversation a reality. By saying get in good trouble, what John Lewis is reminding us is that friction and tension and productive conflict is necessary to move the needle. Yeah. He's reminding us that this is not always going to be kumbaya. It's not going to be a consensus, that everyone will not agree, and because everyone does not agree does not mean we should back off or fold our tent or not fight. And his life is a reflection of that, from activist to politician, who never ever failed to take the House floor to raise his voice in moral outrage at what was happening in America at the time. And he was like Dr. King in that Dr. King had this unique ability, which I think we should never miss, of melding the teachings of the Constitution with the teachings of the Bible into a very coherent, understandable narrative at a time when, 1960s, 90% of Americans went to some Christian church every Sunday. When we were a church-going, very Christian country, or Judeo-Christian country, if you will. And he understood that by that type of an appeal, he was able to strike and adjust and impact the consciousness. I think what Dr. Terry reminds us, which is so important, is World War II and the fight against Nazism was foundational to the momentum of the civil rights movement.
Absolutely.
The fact that black soldiers who fought in Europe and Japan, or fought in Europe and Asia, came back and were poorly treated after we said we fought Hirohito and we fought Hitler for democracy and equal justice and equal rights. So if there's anything that John Lewis would tell us, in this moment, we must fight, and we must work, and we must be active, and we can't be spectators. And what bothers me so much is being spectators.
Yeah.
Now, you can be an activist online, but it can't stop there. And you can't be an activist, and then when voting time comes, you've got 1,000 reasons not to vote. And all of these things, you have to use every tool available. Voting, protesting, social media, organizing, all of these are tools for us to advance our cause and our movement. There's a role for those in the academy, those who teach and study to help us understand better the historical narrative. We're in a posture right now in this country where this second Reconstruction period, from 1964, 65 to the present, could come to a screeching halt because of Trump and Trumpism and these policies. A lot is on the line. Witness that here we are on Martin Luther King's birthday, where the leader of this country is not planning to be at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, but is planning to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Think about the profound statement that makes in 2025. We're not in 1950, we're in 2025. We've got to raise our voices and resist that with all that we have.
How about a hand for our guests? Dr. Brandon Terry and President Mark Morial. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is MLK, the Pan-Africanist. Please share your experiences and insights using the hashtag WNYC MLK. And now, please welcome back to the stage NYC Now host, Janae Pierre. She's joined by the Deputy Executive Director of African Communities Together, Diana Konote.
Hello. That's right. I want to feel your energy this afternoon. I'm a little bit different, y'all. All right? So, this is an intimate space. If you want to shout amen, you do that. If I got one of these, a little finger snap, we're all here for it, okay? All right, Diana, thank you so much for being here. I want to start our conversation exploring the connection between Dr. King's civil rights movement and immigration policy.
Sure. Around when we saw the Civil Rights Act pass, the Voting Rights Act pass, one of the things that also changed in this country was our immigration policy with the passing of the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965. So all of that was happening around the same time. And what that replaced was our previous immigration policy, which was based on national origin. Prior to the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965, I'll call it the INA, in this country, our immigration policy was based on where someone was from, their country of origin. And the idea around that was that the government was trying to ensure that immigrants to this country were mainly from Northern Europe, and they wanted to keep out certain other folks, mainly from Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, Asians, Africans. And so that was kind of, what it was from around the 1920s until 1965.
That's crazy. It sounds like 2026.
Yes. And we see a lot of the policies that this administration is implementing really mirroring what was in place in the 20s. And that's a lot of what we're fighting against.
Yeah. So let's talk more about the work that you do. How does civil rights frame that work that you do at ACT?
I mean, a lot of, so ACT, African Communities Together, is an organization of African immigrants here in the US, and we work to improve the lives of African immigrants here in the US. And I'll start by saying that a lot of the opportunities that we have here as African immigrants stem from the civil rights that leaders within that time fought and won. And so a lot of the work that we currently do is to maintain a lot of those rights. Right now, a lot of it is to maintain what was already won, but to also expand those rights that folks have, particularly African immigrants.
How did you get into this work? What's driving your passion?
So I myself am an African immigrant. I am originally from the Ivory Coast. I came to the US when I was 8. And one of the things that really drove and continues to drive the work that I've done over the years, including what I do now, is from a very young age, I just had a curiosity about why some countries operated in the ways that they did and some countries operated in other ways. Especially coming to the U.S. and being aware of conflict in certain parts of the African continent. It was just an interest of mine, and so I pursued political science, worked on the Hill for a member of Congress for a few years, and then was able to land this, start doing this work where I was really able to use my passion in a tangible way to support my community.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Everyone here may be familiar with this challenge that's going on social media now. You post a picture of yourself back in 2016. I hate it. I'm not doing it. I'm not participating. But I will say the one thing I do miss about 2016, and I'll say it, President Obama. All right. And right now, we're witnessing a really sharp contrast in immigration policy between President Obama, President Biden, to now President Trump. Let's focus on Pan-African immigration and, its most impactful programs here.
So you're talking about African immigration generally,
yes,
and what has impacted?
Yes, correct.
Once immigration in this country was opened up in 1965, that allowed for more Africans to come to the country. Around the 60s, 70s, we saw a lot of programs that encouraged students to come to the US and learn. The first, I would say, kind of wave of Africans to the US, a lot of them were students coming to learn. Following that, there was the passage of the Refugees Act in the 80s, which provided another pathway for Africans to come to the US, mainly Africans who were from countries that were experiencing some form of conflict. There was also the diversity visa in the 1990s. That program was actually originally intended for and created for the Irish community, but when it was implemented, it actually ended up benefiting Africans. And it's one of the ways that, one of the main pathways that Africans have to come to the US. So these are some of the pathways that were created or that have been created that have benefited the African diaspora, generally African immigrants more specifically, and those are the exact pathways that this administration is seeking to attack as it dismantles our immigration system.
Yeah, let's stay there for a second because we do have another 3 years of President Trump's evolving immigration policy. What do you see those next 3 years looking like? I know, hold on, you need some water?
I'm afraid. I mean, over this year alone, next week makes it 1 year.
Yeah.
We have seen an attempt to end birthright citizenship. We've seen a suspension of our refugee resettlement program. The program has been suspended for everyone. The number has been decreased. The number of refugees we will resettle has been decreased from 125,000 to 7,500. All of those slots, most of those slots are being reserved for white South Africans. We have seen an attempt to dismantle our asylum system. We've seen a suspension of the diversity visa program. We've seen the increase in enforcement internally, which has led to changes in policies that now allow ICE to essentially run amok. They are arresting people at courthouses, schools, churches, places that have been previously considered sensitive locations where they were not allowed to go. You know, people's due rights are being. I mean, people don't have due rights at this point.
I was about to say what rights?
Yeah. You know, we've seen the number of immigration detention just explode. In the beginning of the Trump administration, I believe there were about close to 40,000 immigrants in detention. Now we are at around 70,000. Their goal is to reach, I believe the number I saw was 108,000. You know, they're going to get to a point where they have more folks in immigration detention than regular prisons. It's a really scary thing, and those are the things that have happened in the year.
Yeah.
So thinking about what the next 3 years would be, it's very scary. You know, we are an organization that organizes our community, and we have people, leaders who are very active, who are, you know, out there doing what they can, making noise about what's happening. But there's also a large number of the community that's very afraid. And, you know, this is part of this administration's tactics, to create a lot of fear so that people don't speak out, so that people don't fight back.
Yeah, and I want to also mention your organization, you're on the front lines, you're based in DC, you have an office here in New York City. As we wrap up our conversation, I'd like to paint a picture of who we're talking about here when we refer to these Pan-African immigrants? Who are these people?
I mean, folks from the diaspora, I would say. You know, we consider ourselves to be a Pan-African organization, and what we mean by that is, you know, sometimes when African communities come to the U.S. and potentially other countries as well, folks tend to stay within their own communities, and our belief is that we just can't reach the goals that we're trying to reach if we stay insular to our communities, and that we must have solidarity within other African communities, but within the wider diaspora, with Black American communities, Caribbean American communities, and we must fight this administration together, because we won't be able to move forward if we're fighting ourselves, and if we're attempting to fight this evil alone.
Yeah, I have a few warrior friends out in Harlem. So tell me what that solidarity looks like. What do we have to do?
I mean, I think staying aware of what's happening. I think that, especially for me being in this work, you do have to be mindful of your mental health, because it's extremely stressful. I feel like I'm on a continuous roller coaster of emotions. One minute I'm like, I'm coming for them. The next minute I'm like, I gotta leave this place. So you know, I think we have to take care of ourselves, but I think that we can't sleepwalk into what's happening and what's going to happen. We really, really have to be intentional about fighting back. I think that you know, all of us have different gifts and abilities, and whether it's I heard earlier, if it's posting something on social media, if it's attending a rally, if it's you know, calling your member of Congress, that still works. People, I feel, don't call their members of Congress enough. You should call them every day.
Yeah, because they're gonna call you when it's time.
Yes. If you like something, call them and tell them. If you don't like something, call them and tell them. They should be hearing from their constituents every single day about every single matter. They care about what their voters care about, and so their voters have to care about something. And really just doing whatever it is in your power to push back, and to make sure that people don't believe that this is okay, because it's not okay.
Thank you so much. Give it up for our guests.
Upon returning from Ghana, witnessing a new nation emerge, Dr. King was deeply moved. In April of 1957, Dr. King gave a speech entitled Birth of a New Nation, wherein he paralleled the defeat of colonialism by Africans on the African continent with the struggle for civil rights by African Americans in America. To interpolate Dr. King's speech, please welcome to the stage New York-based storyteller, griot, poet, and playwright, Kamal Nasakere, along with creative producer and arts professional, Emily Matos.
There is a great day ahead. The future is on its side. It's going now through the wilderness, but the promised land is ahead.
Now, I want to take just a few more minutes as I close to say 3 or 4 things that this reminds us of and things that this says to us.
Things that we must never forget.
As we ourselves find ourselves breaking loose from an evil Egypt, trying to move through the wilderness toward the promised land of cultural integration,
Ghana has something to say to us.
it says to us, first, that the oppressor never voluntarily gives freedom to the oppressed. You have to work for it.
And if Nkrumah and the people of the Gold Coast had not stood up persistently, revolting against the system, it would still be a colony of the British Empire. Freedom is never given to anybody.
For the oppressor has you in domination because he plans to keep you there. And he never voluntarily gives it up.
And that is where the strong resistance comes. Privileged classes never give up their privileges without strong resistance. So don't go out this morning with any illusions.
Don't go back into your homes and around Montgomery thinking that the Montgomery City Commission and that all of the forces in the leadership of the South will eventually work out this thing for Negroes.
It's going to work out. It's going to roll in on the wheels of inevitability. If we wait for it to work itself out, it will never be worked out. Freedom only comes through persistent revolt,
Through persistent agitation,
through persistently rising up against the system of evil.
The bus protest is just the beginning.
Buses are integrated in Montgomery, but that is just the beginning.
And don't sit down and do nothing now because the buses are integrated.
Because if you stop now,
we will be in the dungeons of segregation and discrimination for another 100 years.
and our children
And our children's children.
will suffer all of the bondage that we have lived under for years. It never comes voluntarily.
We've got to keep on keeping on in order to gain freedom. It never comes like that.
It would be fortunate if the people in power had sense enough to go on and give up, but they don't do it like that.
It is not done voluntarily, but it is done through the pressure that comes about from people who are oppressed. If there had not been a Gandhi in India with all of his noble followers, India would have never been free.
If there had not been an Nkrumah and his followers in Ghana, Ghana would still be a British colony. If there had not been abolitionists in America, both Negro and white, we might still stand today in the dungeons of slavery.
And then, because there have been,
In every period.
there are always those people in every period of human history who don't mind getting their necks cut off.
Who don't mind being persecuted and discriminated and kicked out.
Because they know that freedom is never given out, but it comes through the persistent and
the
the continual
agitation
agitation
and revolt.
on the part of those who are caught in the system. Ghana teaches us that.
It says to us another thing.
It reminds us of the fact that a nation
Or a people
can break a loose from oppression without violence.
Please welcome back to the stage WNYC's Michael Hill. He's joined by the director of the Carter G. Woodson Institute for African American and African Studies at the University of Virginia, Dr. Robert Trent Benson.
Dr. Vinson, thank you for being here. We just heard an excerpt of Dr. King's Birth of a New Nation speech. Why is this your favorite King speech?
It's my favorite speech because this is the moment where King really contextualizes the U.S. Civil Rights Movement in global terms. He is understanding what W.B. Du Bois said in 1900 about the global color line, that there's a global color line that includes U.S. Jim Crow, European colonialism in Africa and the Caribbean and Asia. And coming off the Montgomery bus boycott victory, he understands that that work is not yet done. And that Birth of a New Nation speech represents his return from Ghana and his understanding that the U.S. Civil Rights Movement is part of a global effort to dismantle the global color line. And that includes ending European colonialism in Africa. And Ghana, for him, is the first major blow in that struggle.
Did he understand what was going on in Africa before he got there?
Absolutely. He had some understanding of what was happening. He knew that there was European colonialism in Africa. He knew that there were only two independent African countries at that time, Ethiopia and Liberia. And so he had that awareness, but he wanted to go to see for himself. He wanted to witness the independence celebrations. in Ghana, March 6, 1957, and he really wanted to meet the new Ghanaian Prime Minister, Kwame Nkrumah, who was taking the Pan-African mantle from W.B. Du Bois at that time. Nkrumah had been born in 1909 in the British colony of the Gold Coast. He had spent 12 years in the United States studying. He graduated from Lincoln University, the University of Pennsylvania. And while Nkrumah was in the United States from 1933 to 1945, he became a follower of Marcus Garvey. And so Nkrumah, a deep Pan-Africanist, understood that European colonialism was connected to US Jim Crow. And so Nkrumah invited King to come witness the independence celebrations. And King jumped at the opportunity. And it was not just King, of course. Coretta Scott King came as well. And they were supported by their congregation, the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, who raised $2,500 for them to go. Now that's $2,500 in 1957 money.
Wow.
That's about $30,000 today.
Wow.
And so we have to honor not just the Kings, but their congregation, who also had this Pan-African sensibility, that it was important for their minister and his wife to witness those celebrations.
Wow. Now, before Nelson Mandela, South Africa had an anti-apartheid activist who not only was a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize, but had a connection to Dr. King.
That's right. So this man was Albert Lutuli. He was Nelson Mandela before Nelson Mandela. If we imagine that Mandela that had walked out of prison in 1990, Albert Lutuli won the Nobel Peace Prize, as you say, in 1961, and he won that Peace Prize for his efforts leading the African National Congress, the leading anti-apartheid organization in South Africa, and their struggle against apartheid. Now, Lutuli had actually visited the US South in 1948. He had done a 6-month tour, mostly speaking at historically black colleges and universities. But he also, in Atlanta, he stayed in the home of Martin Luther King Sr., just a few days after Jr. had graduated from Morehouse. And so there's this connection between South Africa and African America as early as 1948, and between King and Lutuli. And so when King wins his Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, he name checks Albert Lutuli and says that if I was South African, I would have been a follower of Albert Lutuli and his program of Gandhian civil disobedience and nonviolence. And so King was a deep Pan-Africanist who was engaged with Kwame Nkrumah. He also visited Nigeria in 1960 for Nigerians' independence ceremonies. And the Nigerian president, Nnamdi Azikiwe, had also graduated from Lincoln University, had also gone to Howard University. And so this Pan-Africanism was going both ways. It was multi-directional. And so in that way, King was deeply invested in what was happening across the continent, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa.
Dr. Vincent, so much of what we know about Dr. King and what is taught about Dr. King in America is the 1950s, maybe, certainly the 1960s, but not his connection to Africa. Why is that?
Why is that? Well, we hope to change that, right now. And I think that's an underrepresented part of King. We frame him quite often as a US civil rights leader, and that's deeply important, no question about that. But I think we have to frame him even larger than that the US civil rights movement is part of an international human rights story, which he was deeply engaged in, and his connection with Africa. The Birth of the New Nation speech speaks to his sense of African history, that our history started before the Atlantic slave trade. He speaks to the breadth of Africa. In this way, he's a Pan-Africanist. He has a deep appreciation for his African heritage. He has solidarity with African continental movements. And he sees the destiny of those in the diaspora tied up with the destiny of those on the continent. The struggle is indivisible for him. And so that's, I think, a part of King that we need to celebrate. He was in solidarity, he visited, but he also raised money, particularly for the anti-apartheid struggle. He met other Pan-African icons like Tanzania's president, Julius Nyerere, Zambia's president, Kenneth Kaunda. And when he was accepting his Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, before he went to Oslo, he stopped in London. And he gave a wonderful speech in London in front of many South African exiles called On an Address on South African Independence. And here he's referencing Nelson Mandela and Robert Sobukwe, who had just been jailed on Robben Island. So he's deeply attuned to the anti-apartheid struggle. And he tells that audience that I can understand you in South Africa, you exiles, because we have a similar struggle in Mississippi and Alabama that you have in South Africa. And he accepts, even as he believes deeply in nonviolence, he understood why some South Africans, like Mandela, had to take up arms in defense of themselves against the apartheid regime. He continues to make major speeches against the apartheid regime, saying that it's the new Nazi Germany. And he condemns the US government for supporting those regimes, supporting apartheid South Africa, supporting Portuguese colonialism in Africa. So in this way, Dr. King was deeply a Pan-Africanist, deeply concerned with African affairs. And that's an underappreciated aspect of his legacy.
Today's program is entitled Dr. King, the Pan-Africanist. What other revelations regarding Dr. King can you share with us? I know you have a lot.
Sure. So I think what we can share, what we can think about with Dr. King in Africa is, again, his deep belief in Gandhian nonviolence, and how that could apply to African liberation movements. And I think we can go further because he is thinking about a model of decolonization that is more than just flag independence. And I think that's relevant for us today. Dr. King thought about decolonization, just like he talked about civil rights, as more than just a legal transfer of rights, economic power, political power, the right of black self-determination. In these ways, King saw the connection with Africa in these more comprehensive ways of decolonization, that struggle being united.
What would he think about? I think when we think in terms of colonialism and colonizing and so forth, that we tend to think of 1650, 1790 and so forth, almost an abstract sense of time.
Right.
When, as we sit here right now, we're thinking of a policy that goes into Venezuela and deposes the president there, perhaps for the oil, positioning ourselves for regime change right now in Iran. We came into office saying that Canada should be the 51st state, and we seem hell-bent on acquiring and gobbling up Greenland. So this colonizing that we tend to think of way back in a distant memory is not that distant.
No, not at all. And so you asked me at the beginning that you talked about my favorite speech, Birth of a New Nation. Right behind that speech is a speech that he gave a year before he died, literally a year before he died, April 4th, 1967, here in New York. It was a speech against the US involvement in Vietnam. And here he makes these connections about ongoing colonialism, imperialism, militarism, and this sense of being able to take over and to be in places in the world where we have no business. And so that speech took great courage because most activists in the country, including civil rights leaders, did not want to speak against the president, Lyndon Johnson at that time, right? Lyndon Johnson had been a friend in some ways to the civil rights movement in terms of helping to pass legislation. So it took great courage for King to speak up against Lyndon Johnson's foreign policy and against many of his allies in the civil rights movement to stand up for what's right. And so that King is still relevant for us today, that courage to speak out against the type of imperialism and militarism that we, as you outlined, are still going through today.
My guest has been Dr. Robert Trent Vincent. How about a hand for
Lord, hello, Apollo.
Harlem, USA, New York.
Take my hand.
Thank you for joining WNYC.
In the incredible Apollo Theater.
Production of Apollo Uptown Hall.
Today is a day of celebration and of reflection and of joyfulness.
We're honoring the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. His vision, his determination, and his bravery encouraged us all to become better human beings and strive to create a more inclusive society.
This event is happening here because the success of this theater is based on the premise of what's possible, where everyone is treated equally.
Apollo Theater to Harlem, it's that beacon, it's that cultural light, that energy, and that pride that this community feels because of this building. We've gotten to the conscious of a lot of people that would come here to see shows.
So it's important that Dr. King be honored here in a place that always welcomed him.
Please welcome back to the stage Janae Pierre. She's joined by the co-founder of new media company Pan-Africanist and creator and host of The Breakdown, one of YouTube's fastest growing global black affair shows, Sandra Babu Botang. We welcome back to the stage Dr. Robert Vinson.
Give it up, give it up. And let's give it up for everyone who makes this happen backstage, y'all. It's active. All right, we will spend these next few minutes talking about reconciliation and restitution and the global future. Sandra, Robert, thank you again for being with us. We want to talk about the future of Pan-Africanism. Nkrumah was in a long line of Pan-Africanists. Right. Of course, the one that I think about most often and can relate to most is the Marcus Garvey, W.E.B. Du Bois. But Sandra, you recently interviewed Pan-Africanist and the daughter of Nkrumah. Yeah. What was your takeaway from that conversation?
Thank you, Janae, and great to be here with everyone today. So I traveled to Ghana to meet with Samia Nkrumah, who's the daughter of Kwame Nkrumah. And the reason why I made that trip, because I was curious what the daughter of one of the greatest Pan-Africanists of our time thought about her father. Mm-hmm. And that conversation was a deeply personal, historical, and also ideological account of Dr. Nkrumah's post-independence trajectory. And it was very revealing. I learned a lot, and that, I consider myself an Nkrumahist. I am a Pan-Africanist. I've read a lot of books about Nkrumah, but somehow still felt like I was just discovering this man.
Oh,
right?
Listen, a daughter can tell you a lot.
Oh, yes. And that conversation did a few things. One of them, there were many takeaways, but one of the key ones, reminded me of the importance of narrative. Because a lot of the things that we read about Nkrumah is filtered through Western lens. And so I had an opportunity to hear from someone who was, very close to him and to see how he saw the world. And so it really impacted me. We talked about, just how important narrative was to Nkrumah as well, which is why he invited W.E.B. Du Bois to Ghana later on to work on this massive project of the Encyclopedia Africana, because Nkrumah understood narrative, and that he knew that that would be one of the battles, the post-independence battles that Africa has to fight as well, is controlling the narrative. And so he invited W.E.B. Du Bois. In '93, he moved to Ghana to work on that project. That was one of the missions that brought him to Ghana. And so for me, because of the work that I do in the media and storytelling and narrative, I was really interested in how Nkrumah thought about that. But perhaps the biggest takeaway from that conversation was that it reminded me of the reality that the dream, the Pan-African dream, the dream of a united Africa, what Nkrumah advocated for, is perhaps the most critical unfinished business for Africa and the global Black world today. That is the biggest unfinished business. And evolving that idea from a merely political ideology to a practical movement of continental, and I add to that, diaspora integration today is, I think, what we need to come to the table and think about what that looks like, whether it's political, economic, or both. Where do we start to have that conversation? Because Nkrumah warned, and we're seeing it today, that until that happens, we will continue to talk about an Africa that is rising, but that never rises.
Dr. Vincent, before I add you to this conversation, I want to continue with Nkrumah's daughter. Can you tell me, what work is she up to these days?
Oh, she's doing a lot to really carry her father's legacy forward.
Happy to hear it.
She told me she's working on a book, and I said, hello, long overdue. I was shocked that she hasn't written a book, about her father. And I mean, she, really tried to continue in her father's legacy with his party, the CPP. She's been in government, as well. But right now where she is, she's recently launching the Nkrumah Foundation to really push forward what her father, advocated for, and really just trying to control the narrative and inspiring the new generation, right? The Gen Zs and the millennials, this new generation, inspiring a new idea of Pan-Africanism and reminding them again of this unfinished business that we need to, take the mantle and continue to push the vision forward. So she's doing a lot.
That's great. That's great. Dr. Vincent, with this unfinished business in Africa in mind and with Nkrumah in mind, and the notions of restitution and reconciliation, they were both so symbiotic to Dr. King. And we know that he articulated three evils the civil rights movement would encounter. With respect to a united Africa and the African diaspora, how does racism, economic exploitation, which is poverty, and militarism, war, how do those three things impact the future?
Well, big question. So following Sandra's line of thinking about the unfinished business of Pan-Africanism, we always need to remember, of course, that Kwame Nkrumah was very clear that Ghana's independence was incomplete without complete continental independence. Expanding on that, this idea of continental independence meant fully economic, political, cultural sovereignty. We are still not there yet. Sandra also mentioned diaspora, and one outgrowth of Nkrumah's Pan-Africanism was the creation of what is now the African Union. And the African Union has 6 continental regions, geographical regions, and the 7th region is the diaspora, meaning there's a place for us in the diaspora, there's a place for us in this ongoing project of Pan-Africanism. And so when we talk about restitution, I think what we're talking about is the fulfillment of the Pan-African dream, meaning full political, economic, and cultural sovereignty of the African continent and those Africans abroad. We're not there yet, obviously, but that work needs to come together. That constitutes restitution, and without that type of restitution, there can be no reconciliation. And I think both Nkrumah and King, and I would venture to say Nkrumah's daughter, would agree with that sentiment.
Do you have anything to add to that, Sandra?
No, I totally agree. I tend to get very frustrated, with especially African leaders, because there's been, ideas over ideas. And, Africa is not short on great ideas, but where, we often fall short is implementation, right? And so this idea of the 6th region or 7th region, it hasn't been ratified, right? It's still an idea. And so for me, and I mean, earlier this year, the African Union declared the year 2026 to 2036 as the decade of reparations. But what is missing is coordination, right? African Americans are fighting for reparations.
Been.
It has been a long-standing, I think the bill has been in Congress for over 30 years, right? And this is not even a bill for reparations, it's a bill to study the impact of slavery on America, and it's still sitting in Congress, right? The Caribbean, CARICOM, recently also has been fighting for reparations, and in Africa. So why aren't we doing this in a coordinated effort?
Right.
We're all asking for the same thing, but in different rooms.
Right.
And then when Africa shows up at the European, Union conference, the most important room where they can bring up this topic, they don't mention it.
Right. Yeah. That's
So it's a lot of talk that's going on,
Yeah.
and very little action.
Very little action. Dr. Vincent?
Oh, yes. Following this thread, one benefit, one silver lining of this moment, this resurgence of white supremacy gives us clarity, if we were ever in doubt, which we should not have been, about where we are.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And Pan-Africanism gives us a framework to think beyond nations, to say that what we're going through in the US is not different from what's going on in the Caribbean, South America, Africa.
It's the same
right?
fight.
It's the same fight.
Yeah.
And so Pan-Africanism is still an important ideology to think in global terms and not allow us to be picked off and isolated in our little nations or localities. And so we still need this ideology. We still need this coordination. And we have some of it. We have the diaspora returning to Africa, to Ghana, to South Africa, to other places. And of course, we have a huge African diaspora that has come since 1965, right, and the changing of immigration laws. So we do have this flow, like Sandra is saying. Sandra represents this, of this new diaspora, of moving back and forth, connecting our Black world with allies who are with us in this struggle. And so Pan-Africanism is very much alive through this connection between the African continent and the diaspora.
Yeah.
We are one people.
Yeah. And sticking with the diaspora, and I talked with Diana Kanote earlier about this word solidarity.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know both your thoughts on leveraging that solidarity.
Yeah. And I'm going to go ahead a little bit because I think it's connected to the your point here. When Nkrumah advocated for a united Africa, right, his vision was one continent, unification of the continent, one central government, one currency, one market, pretty much like the United States, right? And he really believed that that was the only way to combat the legacy of colonialism and to foster true independence and sovereignty, because you can be free on paper, but
We know that.
right? And he really believed that that was the only way. And when you look at Africa today, back to the point that you were making about how real this has become for us in this moment we're in, when you look at Africa today, Africa is not, it doesn't lack anything. Lack is not Africa's problem, right? Africa is the one continent that has everything that it needs to be self-sufficient. Arable land, over 70% is still uncultivated, right? Over 1.5 billion people, the fastest growing, youngest population in the world. We have everything that we need. And the question we need to be asking is, why is Africa still poor after all these years? And the question is simple. And that's what Kwame Nkrumah tried to warn us, fragmentation. We're showing up at the UN 54 countries instead of one continental powerhouse. Who's going to take us seriously? So solidarity is in Pan-Africanism. It's in this unification that we're talking about. Integration, continental integration gives us leverage through economies of scale. It would be a game changer if we're coming as one voice versus 54 countries. And we're seeing that now, that frankly, that's why, a president can wake up one day and say, you know what, today is a really great day to slap half of the continent with travel bans and tariffs. It's a really great day for that. And we can do absolutely nothing about it because we're not united.
Yeah.
So it goes back to that. And that's why I think in this moment in particular, we cannot afford to be silent. And we cannot afford to ignore this conversation around Pan-Africanism and what it means for us, not just in Africa, but the global Black world. And I keep going back to that because if Africa is the root, the branches are its diaspora. And when Africa rises, we all rise. That is the truth. And that's what we're missing out on, our rise for all of us, because we're not united.
Yeah. Dr. Vincent, solidarity for the diaspora?
Absolutely solidarity for the diaspora, and thinking too about the vastness of our diaspora. So thinking about places like Brazil. That's the country with the largest number of Black people, right? And think about Afro-Latin America broadly speaking. So Pan-Africanism is about racial solidarities and identities, but it's also the work of translation, of actually being able to connect with Black people who speak different languages, come out from different geographical regions, right? It is about Black people in Europe, it's the Black Pacific, and so the vastness of the diaspora, the Pan-African project, is beyond the Atlantic world, if you will, and crosses languages and cultures and geographies. And that's the work of Pan-Africanism, to be aware of how vast the Black world is.
Yeah.
But notwithstanding those local distinctions of language or culture or geography or specific histories, there is that broader history of commonality, and there is that broad shared circumstance, which means that our destinies are tied together.
Yes.
Right? And so that's the power of Pan-Africanism in this global framework. It's also the challenge of Pan-Africanism, but it's the opportunity to have that kind of global solidarity to move us forward.
Yeah. And listen, we know that challenges will come, right?
Absolutely.
May stick around. But I think, you know, we look at MLK Day as a day of service. We're honoring him today, but, you know, MLK Day is a day of service. So again, as a call to action, like, what do we do?
Yeah.
Right.
For me, and that's a great question, one of the things that MLK said after he returned from Ghana in his sermon, Birth of a Nation, he said, I wish, above all things, that our brother Black Americans would visit Ghana and that they would bring their technical expertise to build and develop this country that is filled with so much promise. That was many years ago, but what I would say is that is even more true today. Not just Ghana, but the entire continent needs expertise. Guess where we're going for that expertise? To China, to Russia. And as a result, we might wake up one day and learn that we don't even own the continent that is supposed to be ours. We need to go home. That's the first step. Go home, visit. There are so many opportunities that are just waiting for us, for us to come and lend whatever we can contribute, whether it's investing, you know, starting a business, lending your skills, expertise. It is needed back home. So the call to action is let's revisit what MLK said, you know, years ago, decades ago, and let's make that trip back home.
Well, I'm a Pan-Africanist, and I think globally, and we've been talking about Pan-Africanism, and I think there's also a place practically to think locally and to think what specific skill sets or characteristics that we have. I'm an educator. I believe in impacting my students, fellow colleagues, et cetera. That's what I do. That's what I'm good at. I would not be good doing corporate stuff, right? I do the thing that I think I'm good at and that has an impact that's Pan-African minded, but has a local impact. Others in the audience have different kinds of strengths. Leverage those strengths locally to have a greater impact, but is connected to a global Pan-African movement and sensibility. So practically in this day of service, we think about it. What are our strengths? What are our passions? How do we leverage that locally to have maximum impact to affect a larger global project? That's what we can do tangibly.
You two have been so wonderful. Let's give it up for our guests, please. Thank you. Thank you.
I want to introduce you all to someone, a performer, to close out today's program. Yoli Zama is a creator. She's a singer, storyteller, songwriter, culture creator. She's going to join us on the stage. She's known for blending Xhosa with English folk music and soul music. And as soon as we're set up, back here, she's going to join us on the stage. I see some folks who've been to this event before. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for you all support of public radio. As I said in my introduction, when there was a crisis, New York stood up for us. Folks around the country who listened to WQXR and WNYC really took it personally and stood up for the station. Now, if you've never become a member of the station, you've never contributed, it's easy to do. You can always do it by going to WNYC.org or WQXR.org and support the work that we do, work that we're able to bring to the community like this. So please welcome now. Okay. So she wants that joke that I've been working on. Working is still in progress. But I will say, and I can mention this twice, tomorrow you can join us on the Brian Lehrer Show to hear this program. And tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock on WQXR, a long-running program that we've been bringing you on MLK Day. It's called A Beautiful Symphony of Brotherhood, a musical journey in the life of Martin Luther King Jr. That's on WQXR tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. I think we are all set. Please give a warm welcome to Yoli Zama.
Zoku binga emlanjeni wo kuba kubetwin tonga hiyo elele Tota ayoyika uku bika emlanjeni wo kuba kubetwin tonga ayayo Chikele maweni ndiya hamba, chikele maweni ndiya hamba mna. Chikele maweni ndiya hamba, chikele maweni ndiya hamba mna. Achika matota, achika motini, achika matota, achika kwa vamandi, aklenza makwenkwe, aklensele mkoti, aklenza makwenkwe, aklenza kwa vamandi. Iyo, 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 helele, iyo, iyo, iyo. Ay, 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 iyo, helele. Ay, 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 yo. Hey, yo, yo. Ay, 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 yo. Mama, 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 mama. Hey, hey, yo. Amatota. Ayoyika uku binga emlanjeni wo amadoda azobuya okubhinqa emlanjeni wo kuba kubethwa intonga yelele kuba kubethwa intonga zamakhwenkwe bobo
Thank you. Hey. Oh. Anybody can get up on the seats if they want to. Nobody's making you sit down.
Sakukuka sapenduka asakukuka sapenduka asakukuka sapenduka asakukuka sapenduka ayo mama iyo mama ayo mama iyo mama ayo mama iyo mama elele iyo mama iyo mama sakukuka sapenduka iyo sakukuka sapenduka asakukuka sapenduka asakukuka sapenduka iyo mama 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 iyo mama
Pata Pata is a song by our beloved Miriam Makeba. We called her Mama Africa. And when her music was banned in South Africa, it was you, the diaspora, who kept her music alive and strength and strong. Mama was a staunch Pan-Africanist whose music she played all over. And fun fact, she performed Pata Pata right here on the Apollo stages, well, next door, in 1967, shortly after releasing Pata Pata. Like Dr. King, Mama lived by the principle of Ubuntu, which is I am because we are. And so, in the spirit of we are, I'm going to ask you to sing with me. All right? When I say, a pata pata, pata pata, you follow Busi. Pata pata, a pata pata, 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 mama, hey, pata pata, pata pata, oh pata pata, mama, pata pata, oh pata pata, mama, louder. Can we hear the group? Oh, you sound so good. Oh pata pata, mama, pata pata pata, oh pata pata, mama, pata pata, pata pata, mama, pata pata, pata pata, pata pata, mama, pata pata. Oh, you sound so good. Thank you. Oh, a pata pata, pata pata, pata pata. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. We loved spending this afternoon with you. And I have to just introduce my brothers. My brother Vusi is from South Africa. And my brother Saidu Sangara is from Burkina Faso. So we are Pan-Africanists. Thank you.
Yoli Zama. Bata Bata. Please go online, look up these artists, all the creators that you heard today at our program. Support their work, buy their books, listen to their music, support all the things that they do. We thank you so much for coming out here today. Don't forget to share your experiences and your insights with folks around the world by using our hashtag WNYCMLK. On behalf of the Apollo Theater, New York Public Radio, and March On, we thank you for being here, coming out, celebrating, and honoring the Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Go forward and do likewise, and I will see you on the radio.